Hello, Rahul sir. Shall we start?
Sure. Please go ahead.
First of all, thank you, sir, for joining us again for the today's session. Just a brief introduction of yours for the participant before you interact with us. Dr. Rahul Johri is assistant professor in University School of Information and Communication Technology, Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University, Dwarka. He is a PhD from Department of Computer Science, University of Delhi. He has been selected as the ACM eminent speaker by ACM India Council this year. He is a Microsoft Google certified professional and ODEM certified blockchain faculty. He was chosen for Albert Nelson Marquis Achievement Award for the year 2018-19 for professional excellence in the field of computer science. He has a large number of research publications in leading journals of repute. His research interests include cloud computing, wireless networks, blockchain technology, IoT, cryptography, and network security. So, dear friends, without further delay, let us welcome Dr. Rahul Johri. And sir, it's over to you, sir. Now you can start, sir.
Thank you, Jasbir, for the introduction. But at the end of the day, I'm just a teacher like any one of other participants who have joined the FDP, just like you only. Now, before I start for today's session, I would like to have an idea of what was happened yesterday. How many of you tried the programs on your machine? Or kya problems face hui? Yeah, it was all smooth. Yeah, some troubleshooting was there required. Koi bottlenecks aaye. Kaisa raha? Were we able to execute the IoT programs? Now, since nobody is responding, so I am a very optimistic person. I will say hopefully sabhi logon ne execute kar liya hoga, because nobody is saying ki nahi execute hua. Because we will be moving ahead in the same direction, and today we will see how to encrypt the data in the IoT network using the blockchain technology. That will be our objective and the mission for today's talk. Are the slides visible? Anyone can say quick yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Great. So we can go ahead and start off with the today's talk. I have named it as blockchain enabled secure transfer of the message in the IoT network. Now, just like yesterday we started with the IoT talk, I would like to share some of the work which we have been doing in our lab on the blockchain technology, the Swinger lab. So in the last 2 years, what we did, we started with the work on cryptocurrency, because that was our assumption that blockchain technology is all about cryptocurrency. So that was CBCT, cryptocurrency based blockchain technology. Then we worked on the other paper that talked of the BLAST. It's called the blockchain algorithm for secure transaction. Now this is a paper that we designed our own algorithm for carrying out the secure transmission of the credit card, because what we did, it was a financial transaction based paper. So we prompt the user to enter the credit card details, CVV number, and the expiry date of the card. So we designed the algorithm. Once we received the financial information from the user, then we devised our own blockchain algorithm to make sure that the secure transmission of the financial data of the user can take place over the web. And the paper was accepted and published in the ESCI Index Journal. Then last year, we started work on the smart contracts in the blockchain technology. So, and we did 2 papers for that. One is our design and development of the smart contracts in smart cities. And the other was the blockchain application and the smart intelligent contract. So both of these papers were well presented and appreciated in the last year international conferences. And they're available on the web also, or if you are planning to work in the blockchain technology and you would like to have the research paper, you can just DM me directly on my number. I will share the paper, and then if you want to go through it, please go ahead. And if you find any problem, just you can give me a call or text me or drop me a mail. I will be happy to help in the work I have done. Then this was another paper that talked of the multi-party open ledger experiment, concept and simulation using the blockchain technology, which was also presented in a Springer conference last year. Now, what we are doing right now is the work on securing the student record in the education institution. That is our work in progress, the WIP, because we have seen that some of the traditional universities like Delhi University, Meerut University, Agra University, those were more than 50 years old. They are having a record of the students which are very quite old. And sometimes if the records are not properly archived, not properly stored, then the records might get deleted, they might get modified, they might get altered. So we can have a problem. So why don't we use a technology like the blockchain technology, quite secure technology, which uses the hashing techniques so that the data remains safe and archived forever. So that even if the student come, let's say for after 10 years or 20 years down the line to collect his transcripts and mark sheets and degrees, the university still has a record. And if the student is a hacker, and if the records are not properly archived, he just may launch attack in the university examination database, fiddle the record. For example, if he scored just 58 marks in maths, he makes it 88 marks in maths, modify the record, and then he comes to the university for the issuance of the transcript. So if the university records are not properly saved or archived, then there would be a big problem. So this is our current work, what we are working on, how to secure student record in the education institution like universities, schools, colleges, boards. So many students are there, right from the schools to colleges to universities. So how we can use the blockchain technology and use the hashing technique proposed by MD5 and the SHA algorithm, message digest 5 and the secure hash algorithm to make sure that the records are archived and saved forever. This is what we are doing in our lab. I will just give you a brief review of our lab. This is what the portal of our lab is: Security Wireless IoT Network Group of Engineering and Research. In our university, in this lab, we offer various internship also to the students in the area of the IoT, cloud computing, blockchain technology. Then there are many number of the students who are working on with me. So what the best tribute I can give to my students is have their picture with me throughout my life, so that I can remember them and they remain close to me. So all the students who are working now, they have some of them have gone abroad, some of them are working in industry. And these are the students who have worked with me for the last 5 to 7 years in the various technologies, what I have been delved into. Then these are the different publications which we have been able to carry out in our lab. So I've just given a profile so that the link is there. So whenever you're interested and you would like to go through them, you are most welcome to do it. And if you want to work in any of the areas which I work in, and I'm going to discuss them as a part of the talk, you feel free to interact with me anytime without any problem. Now, a lot of students, I have always found that they say that we do not, as India, as a country, do not work much in the area of information security. And but we do work. It's high time that we should make ourselves aware of the fact, as well as inform our student that we, Government of India, has taken a lot of efforts in the establishment or the implementation of the security. They realize the value of the security. So one of the first thing what we can find is a creation of the CERT teams, Computer Emergency Response Teams. And they're the expert group that handle the computer security incidents. And CERT is the name coined by the CMU, Carnegie Mellon University. And some of the initiative Government of India towards information security has been setting up of CERT called Computer Emergency Response Team. They are based in Delhi, Lodi Road, Delhi. So those of you who are active in your colleges and you believe in organizing the industrial tours or industrial trips, you can contact CERT. They welcome students who are in the final year of their UG and the PG programs, and then you can see what kind of softwares they have got, what kind of the hardwares they have got, which play a very important role in the information security, because they do a lot of malware analysis. They will also carry out white paper publications. So it should be a good sojourn for the students, because they can realize what all the government of India is doing. Then there is a setting up of DSCI, Data Security Council of India, in association with the NASSCOM. Now, unlike the IEEE and ACM, where the membership is chargeable, the DSCI membership for the professional is free of cost. So if you plan to work in the area of security in the coming months or year, you can register yourself or take a membership of the DSCI, Data Security Council of India, and they keep on informing about the various initiatives being done in the area of the information security. Then we got ISEA, Information Security Education and Awareness. They also conduct various symposium, workshops, and seminar to give the awareness to the students of the UG and PG program regarding the cyber security. And then another thing what Government of India has done around 3 years back, they have made it mandatory in the corporate organization and the public sector undertaking regarding the appointment of the Chief Information Security Officers. And they are almost considered as equivalent to the designation of directors or the professor level. And they play, and they have been given powers and rights and privileges that all the relevant data pertaining to that organization will be duty and responsibility of the Chief Information Security Officer. That data should not get lost, should not get deleted, should not get modified, should not get corrupted, and smooth flow of the data should take place. And data should also be secured from various attacks. Like, we know, we have got various kind of the attack, like internal attack and the external attacks. For example, spoofing is there, masquerading, modification, denial of service, distributed denial of service, birthday attacks. So many number of the attacks are well known in the open source world, and there will be more than that attacks in the closed domain, which are only launched by the hackers. So some of the portal which I thought we'll share with you, like the CERT, must go through them. If you work in the area of information security, you will have your knowledge level enhanced to the next level. That is for sure. I have been associated with the CERT, so I know the kind of work they do. Then the ISA, Information Security Education and Awareness, they also give funding, wherein you can organize the lectures or symposium for their students regarding the information security. Then DSCI, Data Security Council of India, it's a free of cost membership they offer. So as a professional, you can take, and they will keep on updating you about the latest happenings in the information security world. Now, there's a very beautiful quote I found on the web, which I want every one of you to go through if you would like to work in the area of the information security. So just silently go through it for a few seconds. Now, this is a quote by the Art of War writer, the Chinese writer, Sun Tzu. Now, what he says, as a king, as an emperor or as a king of the kingdom, always be in the ready state. You really do not know whether any attack will ever be launched on your kingdom or empire or not. So that is what the essence of the information security is. Though normally we realize the value of security once our data has been bugged or our data has been hacked. So the writer makes a point that we should realize the value of security and adopt sufficient preventive measures, take sufficient precautions so that our data is well protected. Though the attack may or may not be launched for the entire life in our life, for our data. But then we should not be caught in the unaware state. For example, we know the value of information security, but then also we don't adopt sufficient proactive measures. And once our data is stolen or theft has taken place, then we adopt measures. So why don't we act in a proactive mode? And why don't we take sufficient preventive measures so that our data is never lost, it is never stolen, and we are never in a position where we need to go to the cyber police and file a case and get our case sorted with the help of the police, which might be solved or which may not ever be solved. So there's always a game of proactive versus reactive approach. Either you wait for an incident to happen and then you adopt preventive measures, or you are fast enough, smart enough, and you adopt sufficient preventive measures, and your data never ever gets stolen, or no theft ever takes place of your data. Now, when we talk of data, there are a few facts about data when we talk of 2021. First is data is a new oil. In the sense that almost all the top-notch IT companies, they are after our data. They want access to our data. They have got their algorithms. They keep on testing those algorithms on our data. So if you look, all these companies, we call them as a Maggie companies: Microsoft, Amazon, Adobe, Google, IBM. They MAGI. They are after our data. They want our access to the data, and we say data never sleeps. Somewhere somebody is continuously processing or mining my data. Now maybe it could be my bank, it could be my financial institutions like insurance companies, it could be the hospitals, it could be the hotels, it could be the railways and the airways reservation systems where I am booking a ticket. So somewhere somebody is continuously processing my data. Now we can have two kinds of data. One is the open source data, which is freely accessible, or we can have the paid data, the proprietary data. For example, yesterday we discussed the IoT network, which we would like to establish, let's say in the desert region of Rajasthan, maybe in the Ajmer district or in the Jaisalmer district. And the deployment of the sensor will take place, the data will be captured, and I can sell off the data to the interested parties. So here all the data is proprietary in nature. So data, again, we need to protect the data which is actually proprietary in nature. Open source data, there is no point because it's easily accessible on the web. So the big question that comes, can the data be secured? So we're talking of the data privacy and the data security. Now this is where the blockchain technology creeps in. It provides the algorithm, it provides the hashing technique with the help of which I can secure my data. And the technologies are foolproof, and the technologies, there are no known attacks as of now on the blockchain because it uses the hashing technique. So the blocks are very much protected in nature. So what we say, next 4 to 5 years, a lot of work will get done in the area of the blockchain technology, though it has been there in the last 2 to 3 years also, but we are looking for a lot of work till 2025. And beyond that, very difficult to predict, because IT industry, we all know, we cannot make a prediction beyond 5 years. What will happen after 5 years? Very difficult to say. So, but right now, a lot of work is getting done in the area of the blockchain technology. So if you're planning to take it as a research topic in the information security, then blockchain technology is definitely one of the promising areas. Now, there is also about the personal details, because most of the time what we find, our details are there on the web. So it could be my date of birth, my name, the name of my parents, the qualifications, the mobile number, the email ID, my workplace and residential address, the name of my spouse, the children name, and the qualification and details. Now, do I need to protect such a data of mine? There's no need, because many people already know about my personal details. Like my employer knows about it, my school knew about it, my college knew about it, my friends, neighbors, relatives. So many people already know about these data. What is my qualification? What is my mobile number? What is my email ID? Where do I work? What is the name of my spouse? How many children I have got? What are their qualifications? So there is no point in providing a protection to such a kind of data. Then why we should use the blockchain technology? They definitely will be used for the IoT, because that is the title of the talk. Beyond that, we always use it. Yeah, there is before we talk find an answer to that problem. There's also a lot of social network data already there on the web. Like especially the younger generation, the 18-25 age group, they keep on uploading their posts, their blogs, their photographs, their audios, their videos. So much amount of data as a person we have already uploaded on the web. And these companies already know about our data, the WhatsApp, the Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. So many social platforms are there, and they are having access to our data. So if they ever try to analyze our data, they will come to know everything about us. Where do I live? What is my name? What is my interest? When do I do shopping on the web? Because they keep on tracking us. Social trackers are there, which is website I most popularly browse. What kind of communication I do, or what kind of messaging I do on the web. So almost everything is known to these companies, what we call Maggie group of companies. Now, what I am concerned as a user is my biometric details. That is something that should not be misused or should not be taken off without my consent or permission. I'm okay with my personal details because it is known to so many people around me. But if I'm talking of my account details, like bank account details, my digital wallet details, my biometric details, now that is something is very close to me. And I do not want anyone to have access to it without my consent. So this is where we need to adopt a technology like blockchain, wherein we can store the information of a user in a very secure format, in a very secure way, by creation of the blocks. So we'll see a diagram how the block creation takes place so that it will become easy to understand. But this is what our focus is. Why use blockchain technology? So as to provide the protection to the integrity of the individual, because this is something very personal, very close to him. So if whenever any of the companies, maybe government or the private companies, would like to have access to any of these things, they should take a consent from the user. Only if the user is comfortable with it, he says, okay, fine, you can use my bank account details, my digital wallet details, I have no problem, then yes, absolutely. Once you have taken written consent from the user, then the government or the private companies can access it. They can use it for any kind of the purpose. But if the user says no, then it is his right to privacy. It is his right to security. Then the data should not be used for any of the purposes. Now, such a kind of data we need to protect using the blockchain technologies for that matter. So besides what we say, the marks scored by the students in the educational institutions, because that need to be remain archived forever, we also need to store the information about the financial transaction information about the user, because that is something very close, very personal to the user. So what is the solution to all these ills? It's adoption of the blockchain technology. We have already discussed the reasons why we should use them. We should use them to protect the integrity of the user, the financial transaction information of the user, like credit card details, the debit card details, the digital wallet details, the bank account numbers, the insurance policy numbers, the premium amount he pays. These are the something which should be archived and protected forever. We just cannot let anyone to have a free access to it without the written consent or permission of the user. So what we are looking forward in the information security world in the next 5 to 7 years is a full-fledged deployment of that blockchain technology. And what are the prerequisites? A person should have a good knowledge of cryptographic techniques, because a lot of, I don't say it's a compulsory thing, but yes, knowledge of the cryptography helps in designing and development of their own blockchain. So it's not something like compulsory part, but here it is something like advisable. If you have a knowledge of symmetric and asymmetric cryptography, symmetric means you use a single key for carrying out encryption and decryption, whereas asymmetric means you use a pair of keys for carrying out encryption and decryption. Symmetric cryptography will use single key. Asymmetric cryptography will use a pair of keys, public and the private keys. Then we must have a good knowledge of the cryptographic algorithms. Now, cryptographic algorithms are very, just like what we discussed yesterday also in the IoT application. We have got DES, we have got AES, we have got RSA. We can use these kind of the algorithms for providing a protection to the data. Then we have got a hashing, which is very important, and we'll see the simulation of it also using a Java cryptography architecture support, a JCA, and something what we call the MAP skills, mathematics, algorithms, and programming. These are very important skills in today's world. So as a teacher, we owe that responsibility to imbibe this principle in our students, that a person should have a good knowledge of mathematics, a good knowledge of algorithm, and a good knowledge of programming. And
believe me, it's a deadly combination. Rarely you will find a student who is good in almost all these three skills. Otherwise, you normally find the student who's either good in programming only, or is only good in algorithm development, or he may be good in mathematics. But if he's good in all the three skills, he will be very valuable commodity in the IT industry, and good in the research also, because these are the skills required for the good research work also. Now, when we talk of the pure blockchain world, those of you might be working in the blockchain technology, the real credit goes to Satoshi Nakamoto. Now, he is a person who has done a lot of work in the area of the blockchain technology and the cryptocurrency. Rather, he was a pioneer who started off with the work. And still, the information security world is actually confused. That is it he who did it, or it was an undercover agent who came and did it? Because he has never staked claim. He has never taken the credit for the work. Because if you ever find the information security world, there are so many disputes, there are so many claims that who is real Satoshi Nakamoto. So he's known for inventing the bitcoins. He also implemented the world's first blockchain, which we'll see just now what he did way back in the 2009. He also deployed the world's first decentralized digital currency. So he has done a lot of work. Rather, he was a pioneer who started off with the things. But the information security world is not sure that whether he's a Japanese, whether he's a Chinese, or what, or who is he actually, because he has never staked claim for the work as such. Now, let's look about the initial part of the Satoshi Nakamoto work. He introduced the Bitcoin, which we all know is a cryptocurrency. And we say a decentralized digital currency without a single centralized bank or a single transactions are verified by network nodes through cryptography and recorded in a public distributed ledger called as the blockchain. So it's a decentralized, more like a peer-to-peer network spread across the globes with multiple number of nodes getting added to the network, and information is all secured with the help of the hashing algorithms like the MD5 and the SHA, Message Digest 5 and the SHA. Now, since we have been discussing about this part, about the Satoshi Nakamoto, we just discussed his contribution, his work in the area of cryptocurrency is immense. Now, let's have a look of the world's first block of the transaction which he mined. So we'll go through the website. It's called blockchain.com. Is the website visible? Anyone can say quick yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Great. So we can have a look. This is the first block which was mined by Satoshi Nakamoto. And this is the hash value which has got generated. And we will also generate our own hash value. I will just give a program demonstration or simulation in the Java, how to generate them. Then these are the confirmation which for the concerned block. Then we can have see the nonce. That is the date and the timestamp. It is 8:24 a.m. in the morning on the 9th January 2009. That was the first block created. Now height indicates what are the total number of blocks in a blockchain. So this was the first block. So its height is currently 1. Then miner is unknown. We really do not know who created or who designed this block in a blockchain. Then the number of transactions was first, which was recorded, and difficulty level was also 1. So that was the first block which was mined by Satoshi Nakamoto. That is the name we know. And our actual name can vary. We are not sure of that. But that was the first block that was ever mined in the blockchain world, in the cryptocurrency world. Now, if I would like to have the information, what is the current status? Because we have seen the block on the January 2009. So we can have a look at the latest block of the blockchain. That what is the current status going? How many number of blocks are there in the blockchain in the world right now? So again, we can go to blockchain.com, and I will just share the URL also on the Meet so that you can also open it on your machine and have a look. Yeah, I've already shared it, so you can have a look over there, and you can open it, and you will come to know that more than 6 lakhs blocks have been mined right now.
So if you click on this hyperlink and you go to the website, you will come to know that right now 6,86,223. That many number of blocks are there in the blockchain, and just 4 minutes back, one block has been mined. And what was the size? 1418782. So the size is all in terms of byte, and it will give the list of the block. So if you like to know about any of the block, you can click on it. So I click on the height, and it will take it to the concerned block, and then all the information means on the 4th of June this is what we call the nonce, NONCE, the date and the timestamp. So 1531 on 4th June 2021. So that is the timestamp for this particular block. So that is how the blocks keep on getting added to the blockchain. Who started? Satoshi Nakamoto, and the current status is that though in India it is still need to be legalized by the RBI. Though a lot of work is being done, government has also instituted a committee just few days back to legalize the entire procedure so that it can be formally accepted by almost all the banks, and the people can start trading in terms of the bitcoins. But then full-fledged commercial operations are yet to happen when we talk of the Indian scene asset. Though in Europe, we have seen the Elon Musk and many other entrepreneurs who are supporting the blockchain technology just like anything. They are good supporters of the bitcoins as a cryptocurrency. So many number of the cryptocurrencies are now available. So there's a huge push from the IT industry side as well as from the entrepreneurs who would like to carry out the commercial transactions using the cryptocurrency. But unless and until it is foolproof and bug-free, it won't be accepted in the Indian domain asset. And that is what the government of India is taking care of these things. Now, when we start dealing with the blockchain, we must also realize the basic pillars or the characteristic feature of the blockchain. So we've got three features, what we call DIT: decentralization, immutability, and transparency. So we call it them DIT principles of the blockchain technology. And all of the three hold good, because decentralization, the true meaning of decentralization is not having a single centralized unit. Blockchains are totally autonomous in nature. So just like if you mine a block in a blockchain, I also mine a block in a blockchain. So the powers and the privileges which you are having, I'm also having the same power and privileges. So everyone is almost at par. Everyone enjoys the same privileges in the addition of the block in the blockchain, and they are not governed or controlled by a centralized governing unit. Just like in the formal banking system in India, or rather in almost all the countries, we've got a Reserve Bank of India. For example, you take the RBI, and then there are nationalized bank, and then there are private sector bank. So RBI monitors or controls the working of almost all the banks. That what is the current status, what is the health of the bank, how much amount of money they're having credit, what is the debit status, what is the balance sheet status, is the bank has a good amount of reserve funds or not. So RBI keeps a track of every bank. And the moment they find that any bank is doing something fiddling and it is not taking care of the interest of the customers, immediately RBI gives a red flag to the bank and it's come in the public domain that you do not carry out the RBI gives the advices and guidelines to the normal public that now you do not invest money in such banks, because like the chit fund companies are there, the micro small banks are there, whose banking system is totally flawed because they don't follow all the logical and methodical principles as defined in the banking systems. Another is the transparency. Transparency in real life means something with almost zero opacity. So blockchain follows zero privacy policy, and the power and the permissions and the privileges, it's something which everyone can easily enjoy. So it can be viewed by anyone onto the network. So it is open to all. Nothing is hidden. That is what the objective is. And third is what we say immutability. Immutability, something which you have written once should not be modified. Like we write up on a piece of paper, and if you write in with a pen, and if you want to edit the data, you cannot do it unless and until you apply the whitener over it, or you tear off the page together, or you cut off something you have written with your pen. But in the digital world, you can always erase off without the source ever coming to knowing about it, that yes, you are fiddling with the data, because here original copy of the data remains intact. So immutability means something that cannot be altered, that cannot be modified. And it means the transaction which has been recorded or pushed into the blockchain once, it cannot be altered by anyone. So all these professional hackers who are there spying on the web, the script kiddies, the hacktivists, the crackers, they are just spying our data because they would like to access our data. Just like, for example, a few days back, you would have seen the Domino's database got hacked. Even the Air India database got hacked, and the records of millions of customers who have booked the tickets on the Air India or who have ordered the pizza on the Domino's, it was all in the dark web. It was known to so many people. At what date and what time you ordered the pizza, how did you pay the amount, what was the currency you used, everything came into the open world because they have not secured our data. Again, when we say Domino's and the Air India, they are not IT companies. So we can't blame them. They have further outsourced their operations, the IT operation, to the different IT companies. Like it could be the Ericsson or Grip City or Negaro or Accenture or TCS or Infosys. Actually, these companies are to be blamed. They did not adopt sufficient preventive measures to protect the data of the individuals. So tomorrow, if my data get hacked, don't blame that company directly because they have further outsourced it. For example, if my data get hacked from the Punjab National Bank or from the SBI, banks are not IT companies. They have further outsourced their operations. So whichever company is taking care of their back-end part, they are to be blamed for it, that they did not use the sufficient cryptographic techniques or algorithms or the blockchain technology to make sure that the data remains in a safe state. So these are the companies to be blamed for it. And they are charging huge amount of the money from the banks as well as from the, like the Air India example or the Domino's. So they are paying a lot to these companies, and these companies should own the responsibility that yes, the data of the customer remains in the protected state. Now, the general underlying principle what we are following is don't give all the control to one entity, but trust many entities, many stakeholders. Because if you give the control only to one, just like on what we have in the traditional banking system, then the problems can arise. But if you got multiple people who are taking care of the things, so multiple trust holders or stakeholders are there, then the things become easy, because then your network is being monitored or supervised by many people around you, and not all of them will become corrupt, that is for sure. And your network is also being monitored at the multiple locations by the multiple people. Now, there is a very good video on the cryptocurrency and the blockchain technology, which I would like to share. A small 2-minute video, which will clear many doubts what I have been saying it for the almost like last 20-25 minutes. And I want everyone to have a look at it. Even I will share the URL in the chat window. It's a very good video. You will enjoy watching it, and many concepts will become clear.
When you want to buy something normally using your normal bank card, this is what happens.
I'm sharing the URL on the chat window. Please have a look at it.
For the money. The bank checks its records to see if I've got enough in my account. If I do, it lets the shop know. It updates its records to show the movement of money from my account to the shops. It takes a little trouble. Now, if you wanted to remove the bank from that system, who else would you trust to keep those records and not alter them or cheat in any way? I wouldn't trust you. I wouldn't trust you. In fact, I wouldn't trust any single person, but I might trust everyone. The idea is you don't have a central record of transactions. Instead, you distribute many copies of this ledger around the world. Each owner of each copy records every transaction. So, to buy something using cryptocurrency, I give the shop my details. The shop asks all the bookkeepers if I'm good for the money. The bookkeepers all check their records to see if I have enough. If I do, they tell the shop, and then all update their records to show the movement of money. So there's no way that a forged transaction can make it in. If I try to alter a ledger, it won't match all of the other copies. And it gets rejected. Oh, and one of them, at random, will be given a reward of some newly created cryptocurrency. This is how cryptocurrencies work. And remember, all of these bookkeepers, all of these ledgers, they're not actually people. They're computers. Lots of computers.
So I hope we have seen the video and the concept would have become clear, because the video is very good. It starts with the basics, that what cryptocurrency is all about, what the blockchain technology is all about, and how the millions of machines around the world participate in the creation of the blockchain network. Are the slides visible and the audio, the voice is audible?
Yes, sir. Yes,
okay,
yes.
Great. So we have seen the blockchain. We have started with the Satoshi Nakamoto role. We have seen what he did, how he created the blockchain, and they are visible today on the web. We can have a look. Then the three basic principles of the blockchain: decentralization, immutability, and transparency. Now the big question that should come to my mind is how the blockchain gets created. How, and it's more like a linked list, which I think all of us have taught in the first or second year of our, we would have studied first and then taught to the students also. Same way the blockchain also get developed. So initially I've got a first block, and I call it as a Genesis block. The first block which is going to be added into a chain is the Genesis block. Then this block will be linked or connected to a next block, what we call B1, and data will flow from the Genesis block to the block 1. Now what is this data? What the block is actually going to contain? What will the content of the block? That is something which is need to be understood in a right perspective. So we say every block carries few information, few sets of information. What is that? What is the hash of the previous block? So I can generate the hash. I can write my own technique. Java provide the hash tables. I can use the hashing technique provided by Java, or I can use the predefined algorithms in cryptography like MD5, Message Digest 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 versions are available for the MD5, or the SHA like secure hash algorithm. I can use them to generate the hash for the previous block. Then the block will also contain data. So we say fiber data, which is financial data, insurance data, banking data, educational sector data, and the EMR. EMR is the electronic medical records of the patient in the hospital management systems. So this, what kind of data I'm trying to protect, that is something what the blockchain expects me to write in the second entity or second phase of it. Third is a nonce, that is a timestamp, the date and the time of the creation of the block. And then again the hash of the current block. So every block will have minimum 2 hashes. One is the hash of the previous block, and one is a hash of its own block. So, and the data and the timestamp. So minimum 4 basic information will be there in almost every block in a blockchain. And the Genesis block does not have a hash of the previous block. So it will have a value null, because the first block is a originator or the creator of the root. So everything will start from the first block. So as a Genesis block will not have the hash of any previous block, and rest of the block in a blockchain will always have a hash of the previous block. So we have the first B0, then B1, then B2, the second block, then we have got a B3, B4, B5, and the blocks will keep on getting added to a blockchain. Now, as far as literature which I have read and understood, there has been no limit as of now on the number of blocks which a blockchain can contain. Though some of the people have, some of the researchers and authors have commented something on that, but since it has not been approved by any of the international organizations that yes, what should be the upper limit on the block, like 2 raised to the power 16 or 2 raised to the power 32 or 2 raised to the power 64.
So as of now, and we have just seen the blockchain.com also, more than 6 lakhs of the blocks have been added to the blockchain. So there's no upper limit how many number of blocks will be added to a blockchain. So for example, if you want to start any of the research work in your university or college with your own student, take a problem statement and then you can create your own block. So problem statement has to come from your side, that what is the data you would like to secure? What is the data you would like to encrypt? So that is something which has to come from your side. Blockchain will just provide you with the entire architecture or platform where you can provide a security to the data. Now, what kind of data? It depends upon your application. It depends upon your project work. It depends upon your research problem. That what is the kind of data you expect from the blockchain technology to make sure that it remains safe, it remains cryptographically safe, it remains, and the hash generated can be archived forever. So we can have the as many number of blocks in a single blockchain. Now let's come to the same concept what we did yesterday. So we'll carry it on and add the blockchain to the IoT. Now yesterday we discussed about the publisher subscriber model, right? Which was used by the MQTT protocol, Mosquitto protocol, for carrying out a communication between the publisher to the broker to the subscriber. So diagram which we discussed was we'll have a server will have a broker. Now server can have one broker, server can have many number of the brokers. And then we'll have a publisher will publish the message onto the broker. What will the broker do? Broker will maintain a table which will have the topic and the content, the values for that particular topic. And then we'll have the subscribers. So we can have a subscriber 1, we can have a subscriber 2, we can have subscriber 3, and as many number of subscribers, because subscribers are the actual users of that data. Publisher is capturing the data from the sensors and publishing it onto the broker window of the server, and broker maintains a table in a and archives the data for future reference. But subscribers are the real users of the data, so they will register themselves with the broker that they are looking for a data, and once the broker is having a data, broker sends a notification to the subscriber that the data which you were looking for is now available, and you can use it for any of your research or commercial based application. So this is something what we have seen yesterday in our IoT talk. Now we extend the same thing and we say that we'll have a database, something. This is also what we have seen yesterday. We have the database stored in the MySQL server. There was a table, MQTT table, which I created, and the data repository or data archival was taking place in that particular table of the database. So we use the MySQL server, and we know MySQL server receives a request on the port number 3306, the default de facto port number supported by the MySQL server. Now what we can do, we can move a step further ahead of it and bring our blockchain world into it. Now what we'll do, the same data which was archived in the MySQL database, we will fetch it and safeguard it, protect it using the hashing techniques. Like what we are going to use is the MD5 algorithm, the message digest 5 algorithm, one of the most popular algorithm worldwide for generation of the hash, the message digest or the hash. And then we'll apply the blockchain technology to make sure that the data is safe and secure forever. So we'll create a chain of blocks, and that chain of blocks, in every block will carry the IoT data inside it. The data going to be generated, what we did yesterday, stored into the database, and then we'll be creating a blocks in the blockchain and storing them, which can be used for the future references as such. So we'll use the blockchain technology for the safeguarding of the data getting generated in the IoT networks. So any doubt regarding it? You can unmute yourself and ask. Or else we go and do the coding and try to understand the code, how to go have the integration of the IoT along with the blockchain. Now we are going to deal with the two Java programs here. First is the number of block in a blockchain. So it's called the Noob chain. And other is the class called block for the generation of the hash values. So is the code visible? A quick yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Good. So we'll take this code in the Eclipse later on, but I thought we should discuss it here in the notepad so that the code is clearly understandable to everyone who is not even familiar with Eclipse or the NetBeans. So as usual, right at the top, we import certain packages because we are going to deal with the database. So we require java.sql package and various other classes and interfaces available in the java.sql package. Then we come to the class, public class number of block in a blockchain. Then we define an array list by the name blockchain, right? Then there are certain variables which we are going to use in our program. So we have just declared those variables. Then we declare a static variable, an integer variable called num1. Then we define a main function, public static void main. And we all know, we have discussed yesterday also, that main function receives only one parameter, that is the string type arguments. And then I also want to calculate that what is the total time which will be required for the creation of the block in a blockchain. So I say, I make a call to the nanotime function from the java.lang.system class, and I start. It's more like starting a timer. So long start time is equal to system.nanotime. Then we declare certain variables, like we have got a public variable, broker variable, subscriber variable, topic variable, content variable, because these are the variables whose value is stored in the MySQL server. So we declare a few variables where we are going to store the return value. Then we write a JDBC code for establishing a connection to the database. So we make a call to the for name function of the class, and we say com.mysql.jdbc.driver. So by writing this line of code, we are going to load and register the driver with the operating system. Then we make a call to the get connection function of the driver manager class, and we specify three parameters. First is the JDBC :MySQL localhost. Now currently the MySQL server is installed on my machine, so I'm giving it as a local host. But if in the real time, we'll have this local host removed, and we are going to write the IP address. We are going to write the IP address of the machine or IP address of the server where the MySQL will be installed. Now this will receive the request on which port number. So we know by default port number is 3306. So we give the port number 3306. Now within it, we have a database called world. So the first parameter contains the name of the port numbers, the IP address, and the database name. Everything gets specified in the first parameter. Second and third parameter contain the user ID and the password. So root and the tool. So we can establish a connection to the MySQL database. Now how to execute a query? Just like we did yesterday also, we make a call to the create statement function of the connection. Now if it is successful, it will return us the statement interface object called the statement. Now using that statement, what we will do, we'll make a call to the execute query function, and we say select star from the mosquito table. So the table which we have populated yesterday, the table we have inserted the records, it will fetch all the records from the mosquito table and store it into a RS. What is RS? The reference variable of the result set interface. So all information comes and get archived into the RS. Now there's a function called get metadata available in the result set. So we call this function, and what is the benefit of calling this function? It helps us to get inside view of the result set. That what are the total number of columns in the result set? What is the name of the first column, or the name of the second column, or the name of the third column? So this will get me more information about the table, the mosquito table, that what are the total number of columns, what are the names of the columns. So everything I can get fetched and displayed to the user. Now there can be one record, there can be multiple number of records. So I do not know how many number of records are there in the table of the database. So what we do, we start with a while loop. So we say while rs.next. Now both Java and C# have used this phenomena, because here we do not know something called an end of file. We really do not know how many number of records are there in the table of the database, because the things are very dynamic in nature. An end of file works only when the data is static in nature. So just like we have got a text file or the CSV file where the data is static and the number of records are fixed, I can actually use the end of file. But here the records are dynamic in nature, they keep on getting added. So we'll use the rs.next. So we start with a while loop, and as we have seen yesterday, we have a mosquito table. I will just show if you have forgotten or if you are maybe missed out. So what we are doing, we'll go to the database, MySQL database, and we go to the database world, and this is a table we are discussing, the mosquito table. So this is what the table schema look like: the publisher ID, the broker ID, the subscriber ID, the topic, and the content. So five columns are there in the table of the database. And if I would like to see what is the current status of the number of records currently in the table, so I just write a query and execute it, and I can have a look that right now there are 3 records. So first is the publisher ID, second is the broker ID, third is the subscriber ID, that is my local host running on my machine, then is a topic, and then is a content. So let us right now insert a fresh record. So I run the Mosquito server for the IoT. So this will also be a good recap of the work what we did yesterday. So those of you who have missed out, they can do it parallelly along with me when I am doing it on my machine, so that if you have any problem, we can always communicate and talk and sort out the problem, do the troubleshooting. So I go to the Mosquito folder. So I have started the Mosquito server on my machine. And as we discussed yesterday, so Mosquito is an application present in the Mosquito folder. And from where the Mosquito came, I have shared the URL. We need to go to the website, download it, unzip it, run it, and it will run the installer, and it will create a Mosquito on your machine, Mosquito folder on your machine. So it's always advisable when you are doing the programming, you do it on the C drive, the master drive, so that it becomes easy for the operating system to communicate. And since these are the softwares, better keep them in the program file folders. Now V is a verbose mode, the P is a port number, and we are starting on the port number 1882. Now if you look at the lines which are printing Mosquito version 2.0.10 starting, then use a default configuration, starting in the local mode only because I am running it on my machine. Otherwise there will be a Mosquito server, a single centralized server in the IoT network, and all the sensor node will communicate using to the broker, to the server, which will run in the mode where all the machines can easily communicate with each other. So we'll have a client server architecture based, where the server will be a broker and multiple number of sensor node will capture the data and relay it to the broker. That means the publisher will publish the message to the broker. Now connection will be possible from the client running on this machine because it's running on the local way. Then creating a configuration file which defines a listener to allow remote access. For more details, we can visit a website. Then it is opening 2 connections. One is a Internet Protocol version 4, which you know is a 32-bit IP address, and the IPv6, which is a 128-bit IP address. So it is opening a socket. Socket we all know is a combination of IP address and port numbers. So it is opening IPv4 socket connection also, and IPv6 socket connection also on the same port 1882. So now our server goes into the running mode. Now I can open another command prompt window and go to the folder where I have a program for IoT, and we compile the program. Program we have already seen yesterday. So I will just compile a program and then launch it. And I enter the value for temperature as, let us say, 100 degrees. So quite a huge value, but and let me check with my server. Yeah. So it has inserted one record into the table of the database. So number of rows entered is 1, and this was a subscriber ID, and this was a publisher ID, this was a broker, and the value we have entered is 100. Right now I can go back to the SQL table and just have a check whether record has got properly inserted or not. So I can see here a fourth record. It has also got inserted here. So I can insert my own record and add it to the table of the database. Or if I want to remove a record, I can do it, remove the record. Let's say I remove it, and so 4 rows have been removed. Let's enter the fresh records. If you have any doubt during the entire simulation process, do let me know. So let me insert certain fresh record. The minimum values, let's say 10. Let me restart the broker server so that it doesn't give me a problem. Now the Mosquito server goes in the running state, and we run a program with a, let's say, a value called 10. So record has got inserted, and we can check onto the broker window and also on the Mosquito table. So we can see one record has been inserted. Then let me insert another record so that the program's execution can be, let me say 15 degrees Celsius. So again, one record has been inserted. I can have a check at my database whether record is properly archived or not. So I can see now 15 degrees Celsius is the temperature. Then let me insert few more records so that only if you have sufficient number of records, then is the point for going for the blockchain technology, because the blockchain blocks will carry data. So if you don't have a data, then what you're going to safeguard or encrypt or apply the hashing technique on. So let me again run for 20 degrees Celsius. Yeah, and again this is got record got inserted. So again I can make a check. So let's do on this only. We have got 3 records in the table of the database. So we'll have a blockchain having 3 blocks, where number of block in a blockchain is directly proportional to the number of records in the table of a database. So that every block of a blockchain represent one record of the table in a database. So here my record is containing information about the 5 columns. So the publisher ID, the broker ID, the publisher ID is all getting automatically generated. So I can see org.eclipse.paho client, Mosquito version 3, Mosquito client @ now this is a random number getting generated because almost all the programming language supports the PRNGs, what we call pseudo random number generators. So it supports them. So we are just using them directly. So we can see here, and this is the name of the columns need to be swapped. Actually, subscriber ID need to be written here, broker ID need to be written here. So the proper, otherwise this is publisher, this is subscriber, and this is broker. So when I was inserting a record in there, swapping has to be done. So that I will do. Otherwise, we can see the contents are only 5 columns. So publisher, broker, subscriber, topic, and the content. So we got insert 5 records into our table of the database. Now we go back to our blockchain code, and what we are going to do, we are going to fetch the value of these columns in the front end. So publisher is a variable which we have already declared. So we say pub is equal to new string rs.get object. Now these are the getters and the setters are the functions supported by the Java and C# programming languages. So get and the name of the data type. If I'm not sure of the name of the data type, then I can use the get object function. Because it takes care of the incompatibilities in the data type. So get object is a more generic function which I'm using here, so that I don't need to worry whether what is the data type of the column publisher ID, whether it was string or integer or byte or a boolean or a float. So rs.get object publisher ID. Then since I'm not sure what type, I can typecast to string type. Then broker, new string rs.get string broker ID. Here I'm using a string function, so I don't use toString. Then rs.get object subscriber ID. Then toString will convert the data into the string type. That is what the toString function does. Then we rs.get object topic. I apply the toString function over it, so that it returns me. It converts the data into a string type and store it into a topic variable. Then rs.get object content. Then toString type, so it will fetch the value of the content. And I applied toString function over it and return the string equivalent of it. Then I can display the same thing to the user. So publisher ID, broker ID, subscriber ID, topic, and the content. So whatever information the IoT data was fetched from the MySQL database has now been fetched in a blockchain program and displayed to the user using the SOP statement, system.out.println statements. Now what do I do here? I would like to have a single record. So I'm doing it in a while loop. So what do? I concatenate all of them. Now str6 is a variable which I have declared at the top and initialized to null. Str6, and since it is string type, I initialize it to a string. So str6 is equal to new string. So str6 is a variable which is ready for use. So what do? I say str6 plus all these variables which are containing the values which are coming from the backend, and they will concatenate it and get stored into the str6. And I display the value of the str6. Then I also calculate the length of the str6, and I display total concatenated IoT record length is num1. So it will display that what is the total length of the one record which is being fetched from the table of a database. And because I'm writing a code within a while loop, so while loop will iterate one by one, navigate through all the records in the result set. So first record will be fetched, it will be displayed to the user, all the field values will be concatenated and archived in a str6. We will calculate the length of the str6 and display to the user. Again, in the second iteration of the while loop, again the records will be fetched. The second record from the table will be fetched. The values will be there in the variables, we'll concatenate them and then add it to the previously stored value. So record length will keep on incrementing. So we are holding on to the previous value, adding a new values to it, and then moving on. Now we come to the line number 53, and we can see here that we know the record length is going to be 146 characters. So what we know, we start with the index position 0 and fetch the first record from our long concatenated string. So first record start from the index position 0 till 145. So we apply the substring function over the str6 and we store the value into the str7 variable. Same way we fetch the second record from the Mosquitto table of the database, and we know the length will be 146 characters. So we fetch the characters from 146 position to 291. So you add 146 to 146, you get 292. From 292 again you add 146, you get 438, right? So we have got 3 records in our table of the database. So we are creating 3 blocks. in a blockchain. Then again we apply substring function and we fetch the characters from the 292 position to 437 position, because indexing is starting from 0. So we have got str7, str8 and str9. So 3 variables are containing 3 records of the table of the database. But just as the number of records will increase, you can accordingly apply the loop so that you don't have to hard code just like this. You can have the loop that as many number of records are there in the table, because we have got a SQL query like select count star from table. It will return the total number of records in the table of the database, and accordingly we can fetch the values from the database and store them into a variable. Now once we have taken the values to the variable, now we can go for the creation of the block in a blockchain. So we come to line number 59, SOP statement system.out.println, chaining the first block of the data from the IoT network. Now what do we do here? We make a call to the one argument constructor of the block. So we say new block str7, and since this is going to be the first block, it's a genesis block, it does not have a hash value of predecessor, so we have just initialize the zeros. Now what we do, we make a call to the add block. Add block is a function here written, yeah, and what we are passing, we are making a call to one argument constructor of the block class, right? So new, we know, is for dynamic memory allocation, and we are making a call to one argument constructor of the block. Now block is another class, so we come to the block.java. Now this is a class where actual generation of the hash values will take place. So what we do, we declare certain variable at the top, like public string hash, public string previous hash, string data, then the nonce, the timestamp, then certain integer variables, and then the block data, which is a variable of the type string type. Now we define a constructor for it. So we invoke a constructor. So we have seen in the program number of blockchain.java, it is passing 2 set of values here. str7 is containing complete 1 record, and this is a hash for the previous block, that is 0. So when we make a call to block.java, here it receives string data and the string previous hash value, right? So now we know, we have seen in the PowerPoint slide that when we talk of the data, we have declared a variable here, data. So we said this dot data is equal to data, and this we know it refers to the current instance of the class, the current object of a class. So we said this dot data is equal to data, this dot previous hash value is equal to the hash value which you are receiving here. This dot timestamp is equal to new date dot get time. So you are creating a new nonce value, that current date and time. And this dot hash will make a call to a function called calculate hash. So we come down and to the function called calculate hash. And this is a function. What it is doing, it is making a call to a function called MD5 of the block class. So right now the entire code is within block class, we can see here, and MD5 is a function which has been defined within a block class. This is here. Now it makes a call to the MD5 function, and it passes the previous hash value, the nonce, the timestamp, and the data which you would like to create a hash of. So the function is called, and the control transfers to the MD5, and it receives all the 3 values, the previous hash values, the data to be the nonce in the string, and the actual data. So it is received into a input variable. Now what we do for the generation of the hash, we make a call to the get instance function of the message digest class and pass the MD5 as an algorithm to it. That this I would like to have an instance of this particular algorithm. Now if my code on the right hand side of the assignment operator is successful, it will return me information about the message digest or a hash, which I'm going to archive into the MD variable. So now this is containing the instance of the MD5 algorithm. Now the data which is coming here is all in the input, right? Now, and yesterday also we discussed that almost all the algorithm works on bytes and they don't work on strings. Now what we do here, we make a call to the get byte function over the input, and we say for the encoding scheme, follow the UTF-8. UTF is a universal character set transformation format with 8-bit encoding scheme. There are multiple variants of UTF like UTF-16, UTF-32. So here we are using an 8-bit invariant of the UTF encoding scheme. Now we make a call to the message digest, make a call to update function over the message digest and pass the content, the BA, which is stored in the byte array. So we pass the content of the byte array to the update function of the message digest class. And then in the line number 40, we actually generate the hash value. So we make a call to a function called digest of the message digest class, which is run successfully, and it will generate the hash value, and we store them into a byte array called digest. And if it is able to do it, we display result as success, and we return the string equivalent of the generated hash value, because we are going to deal everything here in the string type. And if the exception is thrown, for example, the MD5 algorithm, its instance cannot be created at the runtime, or the UTF encoding scheme fails, or the message or the digest function fails to generate the hash value, in all these cases, the exception will be thrown and it will be handled here. However, believing that everything is fine and our function has run successfully, we have been able to generate the hash values. So this function will return. So we'll have return digest.toString and the control transfer back to the same function from where it has been called. So it was being called from here, right? So what do we get in the calculated hash? We get this, the hash values, which we return digest.toString. It will be returned, and return value will be stored into the calculated hash. And then it is returned back to the function from where it has been called. That is from this place, line number 19. So calculate hash, we obtain the return value and store into a this.hash variable. Now we are in a position to create one block of the blockchain. So we say block data, which is a string variable declared at the line number 13. Then we say this.data, which is a fresh data which you would like to store. This is the unencrypted data. Then this.previous hash value, this is the encrypted data from the previous hash. Then the nonce, the timestamp, and then the hash of the current data, this.hash. So our block here is containing the 4 information: the hash of the previous block, the hash of the current block, the data, and the nonce, that is a timestamp. This is the way how we generate the digest or the hash values for the incoming data. Now we need to do it multiple number of times for every record in the table. So we do it for the first time str7, then we do it we create a second block. So we say chaining second block of the data from the IoT network. Then we do it for the second record str8. We know str8 is here. It is containing the information from the second record, right? So we say str8 comma blockchain.get blockchain.size function -1, so that we refer to the second parameter goes as a hash value for the previous block. Then we create a third block, chaining third block of the data. So this is in for the str9 variable. Again, we make a call to the blockchain.get function, blockchain.size function -1, so that we can have the hash of the previous block. And then we make a call to the nanotime function of the java.lang.system class. It returns end time, and then we subtract the start time from the end time, just to come to know that what is the total time which has been taken for the creation of the 3 blocks in a blockchain. And if any problem arises, we'll have a catch which will hold the exception. And we have got an add block function which we discussed earlier also. It will keep on adding a block in a blockchain network. One by one, it will keep on adding the newly created block in a blockchain network. So I hope the code is comfortable. We have been able to understand the code. Now for the execution, what we'll do, we'll go to the Eclipse. So I open Eclipse environment, and those of you who are new to it or may not be comfortable with it, what we need to do, we go to the file, we go to the new, and we create a project. So once the project get created, for example, here I've created a project by the name Blockchain IoT. Then it will have a source. Then I create a package called BIoT, Blockchain IoT. And this is what the package look like. The first line will contain the name of the package. Now I create 2 the Java files in it, which I have discussed the code. First is a number of blockchain.java, which is here, the code, exactly the same code which I discussed in the notepad. Chaining first block of the data, chaining second block of the data, chaining third block of the data. Then I compute the time difference, start time minus end time. and it is same displayed to the user. And for 3 blocks in a blockchain, we are doing it. Now I can run an application to have a look at it. Now this is the code that is working. The number of columns are 5 from the Mosquitto table of the database. Now the name of the first column was publisher ID. That is what our result set.metadata has shown. What is the column count? The 5 get displayed. Then what is the name of the first column? The publisher ID. Then our while loop start, and we start going through each and every record of the table in a database, and we keep on fetching the values और उसको concatenate करते जाएंगे str6 वेरिएबल के अंदर. So different variables फील्ड हमने बना ली हैं, publisher, broker, subscriber, topic and content. और अगर हम देखें अपने प्रोग्राम के आउटपुट में, yeah, so we have seen here the first publisher ID get displayed. So publisher ID for the first record is org.eclipse.paho.client.mosquitto version 3, then Mosquitto client and some unique random number generated for it. Then we get the information about the broker ID. Then we get the information about the subscriber. Then the topic is temperature. The content is degree Celsius. And then the value for it, the complete concatenated value. So org.eclipse.paho client, this. Then first broker information and subscriber information. Then we can see here subscriber information, publisher information, broker information, then the temperature, and then the value, the 10 degree Celsius. And the record length that came out to be 146. Means I've added all of them and made a call to the length function. So just to compute that what is the total length of a record which is going to be stored in the table of the database. Then I fetch the second record. So again, publisher ID has got fetched, the broker ID has got fetched, the subscriber has got fetched, temperature, degree Celsius, and then I concatenate the current record with the previous record. So here the total length of the record become 146 plus 146 become 292 bytes. Then I fetch the third record. So publisher ID, broker ID, subscriber ID. So first was 10 degrees Celsius content, then 15 degrees Celsius, then 20 degrees Celsius. So 3 records have been fetched. And 146 plus 140 makes 292. Plus you add 146, it becomes to 438. So I have to now encrypt this much amount of the data. So I've got 438 bytes to actually deal with, and I should create a block in a blockchain that can handle with it. Now what do? I go for the splitting of it. That is what has been shown in the substring function, where I'm fetching the value from 0 to 145, then from 146 to 291, and then from 292 to 437 bytes. So 3 records have been, the splitting has been done by a substring function. Then now let's create the blockchain. So chaining first block of the data from the network, we achieve the result as success. Now success was a function defined in the generation of the MD5 algorithm. So if you look at this algorithm, the block.java, this was a line that displayed the result success. Means when we are able to get the instance of the MD5 algorithm, we are able to run the encoding scheme UTF-8 when we are successful in making a call to the update function and pass the byte array as an input to it. And then we were successful in generation of the digest. Digest is same as a hash. In cryptography, message digest and the hash, they are synonym with each other. You can call it by any name as such. So that displays the result as success. Now we go back to our program. So success has been displayed. Then content of the first block are, then if you look at the content, we'll have the publisher ID, the subscriber ID, the broker, the content, the values, and finally the hashed values. So our hashed value comes out to be the last part of it. The first block is this. So we go to this block and come to temperature was 10 degrees Celsius, and after that, this is what is a hash value getting generated. We can see it contains square brackets, @ and certain amount of the other numbers. because what we had in our record, publisher ID, subscriber ID, broker, temperature, and the value of the temperature. So value of the temperature was 10 degrees Celsius, and after that is a hash value for it. Same way, we'll have the chaining of the second block in a blockchain. Result is success. We have been able to run MD5 algorithm for it, and then again we can see the content of the second block with a generation of the hash values for it. Then same way for the third block, the contents are getting displayed for the Eclipse PAHO client, and then the temperature. So this becomes 10 degrees Celsius, 15 degree and 20 degrees. So 10 degree, 15 degree and 20 degree. 3 records have been fetched with the corresponding unique hash values for it. And then you compute the time, what is the total time in nanosecond which have been taken place. So it comes out to be some value. And these values can be used if you are doing a blockchain based work and you're writing a research paper, and if you would like to compute, you want to show some certain graphs that what is the time getting consumed in the creation of block in a blockchain. So you can have that, because now almost every research paper wants certain graphs to be portrayed to show the result work. So you can have the vertical bars indicating the time span, how much time is taking for the creation of the block in a blockchain, in IoT network, or in any other kind of application where you're using your blockchain technology. So if there is any doubt, you can please unmute yourself and ask the question. I'll be happy to answer them. Any doubt by anyone? Anything not clear? Someone is saying something. Sorry, I'm not able to hear. Maybe you can write in a chat window.
Can I ask some question?
Sure. Kind of if I can answer, I will definitely answer.
No, it's okay. It's a simple one. Okay. Just have gone through this model, what you have done regarding this one. But I just wanted to know what kind of a practical difficulties you have come across during this work. I mean, is there any things which you can cite us, and so that we also can decide how we should proceed ahead with this kind of a technology and other things? Because because that is the only way we can the ground reality about the SS. Because you may be knowing more about this work, how we have done, but since, as let's say, as a beginner, I want to learn something. So therefore, I would like to assess what is the practical difficulties which you have faced during the usage of this kind of a tool. Or
I got it. Now, initially, when I started off this work, so what I will advise that if you also want to venture into it, start with the cryptography, because one should have a passion for it. Security is something which, if you're not passionate about security, you won't be able to work for too long and for many months or many years for that matter. So you should be very passionate about the security of the code, security of the data. Then what I started with, I can share my own experience. I started with the cryptography. I familiarized myself with the concepts of cryptographic techniques and algorithms. Then blockchain was also coming around 3 years back, 2019. So I thought of why not to venture into this field? Because as a researcher, what I do normally, if you're planning to do a research, venture into a field in the very first go. Always your research paper will get cited, and you can do a good quality research work only in the upcoming technologies, because there will be less competition are there. So whatever you do, whatever you write, whatever work, it will be taken hands-on. Everyone will appreciate it. So blockchain was something which I found to be very exciting enough. So I thought, what should I do for it? So I read the research papers, went through tutorials, went through the YouTube videos, and I came to know that yes, hashing is something which is required for it. Then I started learning about the algorithms like MD5 and SHA. So now again, MD5 and SHA are something which you should not directly go through the tutorials, because NIST have defined the RFC for it, request for comment. That gives the elaborate part of the, let me share that with you also so that you can come to know if you are new to that. Like for example, I would like to know about the working of the MD5 algorithm. So I just go to the Google and I say RFC for the MD5 algorithm. So don't go to the Wikipedia and everything, though they teaches, but then always refer to the pure code source. So this is a request for comment, and this elaborates about the different steps, different rounds which are there in the MD5 algorithms. So basically there are 5 rounds, so it will tell all about all of them, and you can go through it at your own pace depending on how much knowledge you have got for that particular cryptographic principles, maybe what is the background of it. So MD5 algorithm can be understood by the, let me download it. Yeah. So the MD5 algorithm will be dealt with, and the same way if you have got a SHA algorithm, you can go through the SHA algorithm from the NIST, because they are the pioneers in it. They are someone who have been a part of this entire journey of the algorithms. Now these algorithms are all the brainchild of the RSA, what we call Rivest, Shamir, and the Edelman. Now these are the people who have done a lot of work in the information security. So if you want to venture into the area of information security, do read about the work of the RSA, Rivest, Shamir, and the Edelman. And just to share more information, they were awarded the Turing Award in 2002 for their outstanding work in the information security. Same way, we got Diffie-Hellman key exchange algorithm, which deals with the sharing of the keys from the source to destination, shared symmetric key. And they were also awarded Turing Award in 2015 for their work. Okay. So knowledge of hashing is required for the blockchain technology to work on. Then what I also say is the map skills, mathematics, algorithm, and programming. Because a stage will come where you need to write your own algorithm. You need to check for the mathematical correctness of that algorithm. And then you also need to do programming. Now for the programming, I will advise either you go for the Python or you go for the Java programming language, because doing a programming in an open source is very handy and you are not bounded by any constraints. जब जैसा कोड लिखना चाहें आपको freedom मिल जाती है. That's the biggest plus point of the open source programming language. You are a free bird. Your creativity, your novelty, innovation steps in. आप जैसा मतलब आपकी फ्रीडम और क्रिएटिविटी आनी चाहिए, जैसा आपको कोड लिखना चाहें, जो आप सोच रहे हैं कि मुझे ऐसा करना चाहिए, मतलब कुछ तो पैकेजेस बने बनाए मिल जाते हैं, आप डायरेक्टली यूज कर सकते हैं, और यू कैन राइट योर ओन कोड टू डू द थिंग्स. सो फर्स्ट इफ यू वुड लाइक टू गो इनटू द ब्लॉकचेन, स्टार्ट अर्ली, स्टार्ट इट. रादर आई विल से कल आपकी एफडीपी खत्म हो जाएगी, एंड इफ यू वुड लाइक टू रियली डू समथिंग गुड, सो नेक्स्ट 2 to 3 years में ब्लॉकचेन में बहुत काम होगा. उसके बाद ये फील्ड ऑब्सोलीट हो जाएगी अपने आप, बिकॉज कंप्यूटर साइंस और आईटी इंडस्ट्री में वी ऑल नो, दोज ऑफ यू हु हैव बीन देयर फॉर 10 to 15 years, here every technology comes with a lifespan of let's say 4 to 5 years, and it is exploited by the researchers. So much amount of work is done, and then the technology becomes obsolete, and so then certain new technology comes. So here you always have to remain on your toes, learning the new thing, which I think सारे टीचर्स समझते ही हैं, मुझे कुछ अलग से कहने की जरूरत नहीं है. हमारी फील्ड बहुत कॉम्पिटिटिव है, बहुत डायनामिक है, बहुत चेंजिंग है. तो अगर आपको ब्लॉकचेन में कुछ करना है, आईओटी में कुछ करना है, सो डोंट डिले द थिंग्स, स्टार्ट अर्ली, एक्सप्लॉइट द फील्ड, एक्सप्लॉइट द टेक्नोलॉजी, एंड जो भी हम अपनी प्रॉब्लम, बिकॉज समथिंग यू हैव टू डू, आप मुझे अब करना क्या है, तो प्रॉब्लम स्टेटमेंट आपको सोचनी पड़ेगी. मे बी यू कैन टेक द हेल्प ऑफ द वेब टू शॉर्टन इट डाउन, टू प्रून इट डाउन कि हमें करना क्या है, या मे बी कुछ अपने आइडियाज, अपनी क्रिएटिविटीज, एंड दैट इज वेयर आई से कि यू इन्वॉल्व योर स्टूडेंट एंड रिसर्च स्कॉलर, because they are in the age group of let's say 18 to 25, and at that point the mind is fresh, so they can come up with a certain ideas जिसको आप exploit कर सकते हैं research work के लिए. Maybe if you are yourself good enough, आप अपने ideas खुद generate कर सकते हैं, that's good, nothing better than that. पर अगर नहीं कर सकते, if you discuss with them because they are full of energy, वो चीजें सीखना चाहते हैं, करना चाहते हैं, तो वो भी ideas introduce कर सकते हैं. फिर वहां से आप pick up करके and then you can exploit the IoT and the blockchain to the fullest.
Thank you, sir.
I hope I have been able to answer it.
Yeah, I got it. I have some idea, but only thing is I wanted to say what should we know, because I
just
missed
go for it.
Initial part
just
of
go
your
for it without any delay.
Yeah, it's okay. That's fine.
Because if you that another experience, what I will say, share जो शायद मैंने कहा भी, if you start early with any technology, the competition is very less.
Very less number of papers are there in the SC Index journals or in the reputed conferences. So whatever you do, whatever you write, whatever is your simulation, that will immediately get accepted by your reviewers. लेकिन अगर आप 3, 4, 5, 6 साल बाद काम करेंगे उस फील्ड में, तब तक इतना काम हो चुका होगा कि आपके वर्क की रिकॉग्निशन मिलना बहुत मुश्किल हो जाएगी. That's my experience.
Yeah, that's true. That I agree. Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Any other question by anyone? I hope yesterday जो हमने कोड शेयर किया था, मतलब ऑलरेडी वेबसाइट का था मॉस्किटो, सब लोगों ने किया हो. उतना तो कर ही लें, उतना तो मैं सबको एडवाइस करूंगा, बिकॉज उसमें तो सब कुछ वेबसाइट पे है. मॉस्किटो डाउनलोड करना है, अपने सिस्टम पे डिप्लॉय करना है, अपने इंस्टॉल करना है. उसके बाद जार फाइल का मैंने यूआरएल दे दिया, आपको जार फाइल डाउनलोड कर लीजिए. एक थर्ड वेबसाइट के अंदर IoT का कोड भी है, उसको भी डाउनलोड कर लीजिए, कंपाइल करिए, एग्जीक्यूट करिए. मतलब वो तो सिंपलेस्ट है जो एक IoT में स्टार्टअप के लिए हमें चाहिए. उतना तो कर ही लें. उसके बाद डेटाबेस आता है, उसके बाद ब्लॉकचेन आता है, तो वो लेटर पार्ट है. पर फर्स्ट थिंग फर्स्ट उतना करिए. और मैं तो ये बोलूंगा कि अगर आपके पास स्टूडेंट्स हैं, आप इंस्टेंटली शेयर कर दीजिए सारी URLs उन्हें, एंड देन पुट देम इनटू अ जॉब. दे विल स्टार्ट डूइंग इट. And I tell you, your combination, your experience and their energy will definitely help you to achieve something good in your projected work. जो भी आप करना चाहते हैं रिसर्च वर्क, पर करिए रिसर्च. मतलब एक बार शुरुआत में जरूर दिक्कत आएगी, but then once that seed of research will get embedded into you, then you will enjoy doing it. That's my experience. Any other question or suggestion? Anything not clear from my talk? So please let me know. I will be happy to handle with. I'm sharing my number 9910185349 and my email ID. So if you got any doubt regarding any of the topic I discussed in yesterday or today's talk, you can always drop me a mail or text me. I will be happy to help with the contents. So thank you all for listening.
I hope, sir, there is no more questions, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience with us, sir. And what was heartening to see was, sir, the way you practically demonstrated the things. You were explaining the line-by-line code. It was lovely, sir. Thank you for your advices, sir. We will definitely.
Thank you so much.
We will definitely learn from these things. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. On behalf of the department. On behalf of the department, I once again thank you for joining us for yesterday and today. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Jaspreet.
Thank you, Dr. Rahul. Thank you so much. Thank you.